This is Michael Popok, Legal AF. Well, Donald Trump has long denied that he donated any money whatsoever to the Cyber Ninjas Arizona Republican fraudit to look at Joe Biden's win, primarily in Maricopa County, by more than 45,000 votes. He denied it. His campaign denied he donated any money to support that adventure. People in Arizona denied it at the GOP, and that was all false and fraudulent. We now have reporting broken by a number of watchdog agencies, including American Oversight and an entity called Documented, which firmly establishes through at least 2 shell companies, 5 separate transactions, passing through the hands of more than 9 people. There is a direct link showing that Save America PAC, Donald Trump's PAC, paid $1 million to Cyber Ninjas to help support what ultimately ended up being a wasteful, mindless endeavor to actually keep the vote count exactly where it was. I think actually Joe Biden picked up a handful of votes in their audit recount. But this goes much further, folks. This is yet another potential campaign violation by Donald Trump and shows the lengths to which he tried to hide his tracks in the money flow between the $1 million at the Save America PAC, which he grifted off of American people, using the big lie, using it for things that they were not donating that money for. So you have false promises leading to money flow into the PAC, which is also a campaign violation and something that Jack Smith and his team of prosecutors, I'm sure, is looking at as for one of the grand juries. But it goes beyond that. If you're not doing anything nefarious, if you're not trying to hide your tracks, then why have 2 shell companies? Why use at least 1 lawyer and 3 other people to route in a very circuitous way, about as straight as a corkscrew, the $1 million from Save America PAC to Cyber Ninjas? Why not just do it directly? Let the world know it. And when you're asked about it by the media, Mr. Trump, why did you deny it? Why did your campaign office deny it? That you have been funding that. Cyber Ninjas spent and wasted $5.7 million, 1 million of which apparently came directly from Donald Trump, despite his denial. So let's look at the links in the chain that connect the $1 million Save America PAC Trump fund to the payment to Cyber Ninjas, as outlined by the investigative reporting by both American Oversight and Documented. It starts with the PAC. We have the Save America PAC. Then the leader of the PAC, no pun intended, apparently is Cleta Mitchell, who used to be a reasonably well-respected election lawyer at a law firm that actually I practiced at a million years ago, called Foley and Lardner, out of the Midwest. She's since been thrown out of the partnership of her firm for not having disclosed to them her secret relationship with Donald Trump, and that she represented him behind her own law partner's back, so they threw her out of the partnership. She had to form her own firm. Cleta Mitchell is involved because the first thing they had to do was they needed to create a series of links in the chain with shell companies and other companies in order to execute this. So the first source of funds in all of this is that they create an entity, a shell company called the Conservative Participation Institute, the CPI. So the CPI, which let me give you the rogues gallery of people involved with CPI. We have Cleta Mitchell, Mike Lindell, the pillow guy, Mark Meadows, here we go again, with another potential way to squeeze Mark Meadows into being a cooperating witness, and Stephen Miller, the discredited advisor to Donald Trump in the White House. They have this entity called Conservative Partnership Institute, CPI. The very next day after it's formed, it gets $1 million from the Save America PAC, but it doesn't stop there. Next on the train, next up in this hide the ball and hide it from the public, is that they form in Delaware a shell company under CPI called the American Voting Rights Foundation, the AVRF. And the AVRF is headed by Stephen Miller and Cleta Mitchell. So now the money goes Save America PAC to CPI, CPI to AVRF, right? And then from AVRF, it then gets, there's a connection between AVRF that Cleta Mitchell makes and cyber ninjas, introduces them. And then subsequently, there's a transfer of money, $1 million, from AVRF to cyber ninjas. Trump Save America PAC to Conservative Partnership Institute, CPI, headed by all of his cronies, including Mark Meadows and Stephen Miller, to give him some plausible deniability, which they then set up another shell to hide their tracks called America Voting Rights Foundation, AVRF, headed by Cleta Mitchell and Stephen Miller, and the eventual funding that came from Trump, that came from the grift that he did to get that money, goes to the cyber ninjas. Why is this all important? I mean, we always suspected that Trump spent his donors' money on boondoggles and ridiculous events like this, but he denied it. And the GOP in Arizona, when asked, is Trump funding as the losing candidate? Is he funding this audit? They denied it because they wanted to give credibility over to the audit, what became known jokingly as the fraudit, as they try to search for 45,000 more votes to turn the election in Maricopa County, and then did the opposite. They found more votes for Joe Biden when all was said and done. But the fact that, you have two issues here. You got a crime, we've talked about it, but you got the cover-up of a crime. If everything was on the up and up and everybody thought this was legit and they were okay with Donald Trump being associated with the funding, he would have just made the direct check. You don't need 3 intermediary steps, 2 shell companies, and Cleta Mitchell being the bag man or bag woman in this case to make the donation if you thought everything was okay to fund cyber ninjas. But Trump wanted to be able to have complete deniability. He was hoping that the cyber ninjas, obviously, were going to find votes for him, and then he could take to the podium or social media or Truth Social or whatever that failing platform is, or now Twitter, and say, see, an independent entity, cyber ninjas, which nobody's ever heard of, from Florida, conducted an audit, and I really won. And he didn't want people to know that he was funding that. Now, it is a crime in Arizona for the losing candidate or a candidate to actually fund the recount. If this was an official recount, under Arizona statute 16-666, of all things, if it's a technical recount, that can only be paid by the taxpayers of Arizona. That's why they called it an audit, and that's why they kept it to Maricopa County, hoping that they would find enough there to take the show on the road and try to go for a full taxpayer-funded recount. But if it was a recount, Donald Trump would have committed a crime by funding cyber ninjas, but it's just as worse here. It's just as bad here because he lied again to the American people and to his donors to keep the grift alive. He wanted no fingerprints on the $1 million transfer, setting up these multiple links in the chain, using Cleta Mitchell as a bag person to deliver the money because he wanted to try to, drum up and conjure up legitimacy for this entity, Cyber Ninjas. You'll remember Cyber Ninjas is also the one that said we're going to look for bamboo and other, remnants of it having come from Asia because some of the ballots might have come from Asia and all these other crazy stories. Crazy to you and me, but not crazy to people like Carrie Lake, who's the losing candidate against now Governor Katie Hobbs. And she continues to use the byproduct of the Cyber Ninjas examination, fraud it for all that it's worth, in her lawsuits and her continued lawsuits. She keeps getting thrown out of state and federal court. She keeps getting sanctioned, but that doesn't stop her from, taking the podium in rallies saying she's going to file another lawsuit. And there's millions of votes that got flipped inappropriately in Arizona. We're going to get to the bottom of it. She keeps using as the core of her material Cyber Ninjas, this Trump-funded entity that ended up, as I said earlier, that ended up actually finding more votes for Biden than for Trump. So let's run it down. Trump lied again. He denied having donated $1 million through his PAC to Cyber Ninjas to fund the fraud in Arizona. And through investigative reporting by 2 watchdog groups, that's turned out to be a big fat lie, as is the Arizona GOP being asked at the time who is paying Cyber Ninjas and them denying it was Donald Trump. That was a big fat lie. So if you're part of the electorate, you're over the age of 18 and you can vote, and you're okay with elected officials and your party officials lying to you to your face because they don't think you're smart enough or worthy enough to be told the truth, then this shouldn't trouble you. But for everybody else, it's not appropriate. It's illegal and immoral for a candidate to spend money to pay for an audit, to act like it was independent, and then deny the existence of the money from his own campaign, or in this case, from his own PAC. It's not just, if your nose is scrunching up thinking, is there something wrong with this? There is something wrong with this. And the more hot takes we do to uncover and disclose this gives you the information that you need to talk about this with your friends and family, to make the right voting decision at the right time come the next election. This is Michael Popok, Legal AF, reporting on the connection that's now been established between Save America PAC for Donald Trump and the Cyber Ninjas Arizona audit, a direct connection, despite the fact that they tried to hide it between 2 shell companies, 3 PACs, and 5 sets of hands, including Mark Meadows and Cleta Mitchell.
At MeidasTouch, we are unapologetically pro-democracy, and we demand justice and accountability. That's why we're spreading our message to Convict 45. That's right, gear up right now with your Convict 45 tees and pins at store.meidastouch.com. That's store.meidastouch.com.